This is one of the two last lectures you have in 201. They're both on the Roman period. So we're moving now from the Greek polis into the Roman Empire and the Roman cosmopolis. The polis now is the cosmos, meaning they thought that the Roman Empire covered the whole world. So if you're a citizen of Rome, then you're a citizen of the world. Once again, I remind you what I said last time, that this is probably the last year that you'll have lectures in the same way you're having them this year. And that's why we're not asking anyone to create a new lecture. And therefore, for Aristotle last week, the lecturer just simply wasn't able to come, so I had to take his place. This week, the lecture, there's no one around who's given a Lucretius lecture, and so someone would have to develop a new one, and then perhaps next fall wouldn't be able to give it. So I am taking advantage of the history of CVSP and teachers who've been here, wonderful teachers in the past. I'm using the fly sheet of Samira Khoury, who was with us for many, many years. And I'm using this time the PowerPoint of David Risley, who was with us up to recent times. David was the last one who gave a full Lucretius lecture, so when he left, we haven't had another Lucretius lecture. So both the fly sheet and the PowerPoint are not mine, but don't blame them for anything I say. So you have three teachers up here today. You have the fly sheet of Professor Khoury, you have the PowerPoint of Professor Risley, and you have me again giving you a lecture on the material. So if you've been reading that one there, this is to put you right into the heart of what Lucretius was doing, but I'll come back to that. I'll go back to a few of the previous slides of his. And I'll start with this, Lucretius and Ancient Rome. All right, so you've got at least a slide of something there. Maybe you've seen things like that in movies. Now I will follow the fly sheet, basically, in terms of the basic items. For the, maybe it's easier to come around here, I don't know. Is this okay for you're videoing it? Is it all right for me to be? So, basically, we used to do both Epicureanism and Stoicism as two of the philosophies of life that came up, that Greek philosophies of life, that emerged and became popular in Rome. In the Greek polis, they were not that popular. In the cosmopolis now, in the world of the Roman Empire, they became very popular indeed. And the main reason, one main reason for it, is they both offered you not a challenge to seek the truth, and that was the heart really of the Socratic, Platonic, Aristotelian philosophers, even though when we read them today we may find them a little bit, we may not see that immediately, but they were basically launching the search for truth in a much deeper way than it had ever happened before, philosophically, the way Plato pursued it, and the way Aristotle pursued it. So those philosophies were very demanding. They really demanded that, in a sense, that you become a scholar and that you devote yourself to following this material, the search for true wisdom and knowledge in the most serious way. These philosophies claim to have the truth. And you know, in a global world like the world today, many things like that, many cults, many philosophies that weren't very popular in a different socioeconomic, political situation, become popular. You know, so follow me, follow this cult, follow this formula, and you will have happiness. You will have peace of mind. So what they promised you and me is that if we follow their philosophy, Epicurus, if we follow the Epicurean philosophy of Lucretius, and next week you'll have many elements of Stoicism in Virgil, if you believe, if your mind can accept and believe in this sense, that if your mind believes this is a very rational and satisfactory way of understanding everything, then if you follow this way of life, because they presented a way of life more than just the philosophy, then you'd reach peace of mind. And so in the global world of today, anxiety is a course now that we're going to be giving next semester. Professor Boali is going to give a course called Anxiety. So anxiety tends to spread with the spread of population. You can see that easily, and if you're living in a village, it's a lot easier to grapple with life. You may not be very satisfied fully with it, but you have the basic paradigms and the basic parameters and the basic views of what you should be doing, the way you should be living. When you get thrown into the global village of Beirut, or because this is a minor global village here, but if you're Tokyo or Hong Kong or New York or any of the big cities, Paris, the big cities of the world, you start to sort of have to make your way through the world. In a smaller, even a polis of the Greek polis, you don't have that many things coming at you, and it's easier to have a kind of a consensus, some sort of consensus, to do that. In a global world, it becomes very, very difficult. And so the Roman citizen, for whom these two appealed, Lucretian, Epicureanism and Stoicism, both of them Greek philosophies, both of them claiming Socrates as their muse, by the way. Everybody claims Socrates as their muse, you see, because he was such a powerful motivator to get people off their backsides, or get out of their caves, and to kind of seek something, seek something more serious in life than just wealth and population and power, and especially power. So these two followed in that direction. The Stoics, especially, we're not going to spend too much time on them today. The Stoics were closer to the Socratic, Platonic, Aristotelian tradition, but Epicureanism was quite different, and that's why it's good for us to spend a little bit of time to see Epicureanism, so we don't come out of 201 thinking all of them are just like the wonderful people that we've been studying, but there were people with different opinions about life and about the meaning of life, and the Epicureans certainly were one of them. So Lucretius, he's not the founder of Epicureanism. He finds himself in Rome, and basically to seek, the main thing for both of these philosophies is to seek peace of mind. How can you get peace of mind and avoid anxiety? And there are two main things you want to avoid for Epicureanism: anxiety in the mind and pain in the body. So Epicureanism rather simplifies things for us. Okay, what is it we really want? We really want as much pleasure as we can have and avoid as much pain as we can. But because we're intelligent, we're driven to not just be hedonists. The Epicurean is an intelligent hedonist, because the hedonist just seeks pleasure. All right? The intelligent hedonist seeks pleasure that does not cause pain. And so using your mind to calculate what is pleasure, what is longer-term pleasure, what is shorter-term pleasure. And then in the modern period, it becomes utilitarianism, a very popular philosophy in Europe in the modern and contemporary period. And this is kind of, it appeals to people. You don't have to do too much thinking. You have to accept basic axioms that are given. And today I'll try to help you understand what are the basic axioms, what are the basic creedal, what are the dogmas, if you like. If you can see that, and if you accept that this is truth, and then you live according to them consistently, all right, you will avoid anxiety as much as you possibly can, of anxiety in the mind and pain in the body. So basically, this is what I have to try to help you see through the fly sheet and some of the items on David Risley's PowerPoint, to try to see two options. If you look at the fly sheet now, Epicureanism and Stoicism, two options for a way of life to happiness, but happiness meant specific things. And in the Roman Empire, it had the connotation and the specific mention in both of these philosophies and their writings of peace of mind. Happiness is peace of, because what is happiness? Happiness is a word. You have to define what is happiness. Aristotle thought happiness was following reason so fully and completely. That's happiness. The more you follow reason in the way he follows reason, the happier you will be. So what is happiness? Okay, for the Epicurean, happiness is primarily learning to use your mind as well as possible to avoid as much pain as possible, and therefore what pleasure you're seeking won't give you pain, and when you avoid pain, that in itself is pleasant. So the main thing is pleasure, but intelligently seek pleasure means don't forget what diminishes pleasure, and that is pain. When you get to read Freud, if you take 204 and his Civilization and Discontents, and you package what he's saying there, he's saying very much the same sort of thing finally, that, so in the 20th century, he's saying, basically that's what we are. We want pleasure, as much pleasure as possible, but if we just seek pleasure, it'll be suicidal. Therefore, we bring in our ego, what is our reason, and our reason starts to calculate what it is that what we really can and cannot do.
Flashers on your car. Maybe keys and take care of that.
That caused me pain. Now that it's stopped, I can have pleasure. All right, so we're in Rome. So that first item there that she has there, the historical framework on the fly sheet here. Let's look at a few of those items because they are interesting. Now there's the decline of the classical Hellenic culture, the end of the age of the polis, the rise of the Macedonian world empire, Alexander the Great. He takes Hellenic culture to what he thought was all the world that he could conquer. And he mixes the Hellenic with local philosophies and religions and things like this. Aristotle was not very happy with this. He thought they should keep the Hellenic culture pure. But so he spread the Hellenic culture, but it merged with other things. And so the Hellenistic civilization emerged. Here in Lebanon, by the way, you can find the archaeological digs. You find remains of all of these, many before that, but then also of the Hellenic, the Hellenistic, and the Roman in archaeological things that are left that we dig up, and then people build buildings over them because they can make millions of dollars, and then you don't have the wonderful heritage of civilization. So two new philosophical systems originated in Athens around 300 years before the Common Era. Okay, Epicureanism and Stoicism, based on the pre-Socratics, particularly atomic materialism. Democritus is materialism. So everything is material. There's no spiritual. So you see with Plato, he gives you there are two worlds. There's the world of matter and the world of the spirit. One thing he does is he removes any sort of binary aspect to the way we have to understand the world. Everything is finally materialism. And as we will see, and I'll mention it now, that basically he's going to tell you that what is the cosmos that everybody's been trying to understand. The cosmos is primarily atoms falling freely in empty space. And also Heraclitus's Logos philosophy. Basically now, I'm not going to go into these since we don't do them, but the aim is to reach happiness for the individual within a universal empire. So you've got, what I was trying to tell you up to now there on your sheet, so you'll remember them. Conquering the Hellenized East and Romanizing the West. This is what Rome did. It conquered Greece and the Greek Empire and took over the empire from Greece, and it Romanized the Western world that Greece had not conquered. The Romans reached Scotland. And so, Hellenization of Rome, and these are the slogans. Graecia victa victrix, Greece defeated but victorious. So the Romans defeated the Greeks militarily, but the Greeks defeated the Romans in essence, basically that it was the Greek culture that the Romans then built upon, but it was a great, so people think of it this way, what the Greeks did was far superior culturally and in everything later than what the Romans did. The Romans primarily were then famous, from this point of view, was famous for their law. And so Roman law became very, very important, and it created problems in certain religious and theological debates because Western theology became very Roman and Latin, whereas Eastern theology remained very Platonic and Greek and all this. And so that's one of the things that traditionally, when East and West Christianity started to decide they were different from each other, they started to look for things that made them different. Well, the Latin world was Latin, and so following the Roman things. And Greek over here, the world was basically Greek, and so the Greek world is predominant in Eastern Christianity. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, wrote his meditations in Greek. He was a Stoic, by the way. This emperor wrote his meditations in the Greek language. Lucretius, the one you're looking at, I'm well aware that it's not easy to elucidate in Latin verse the obscure discoveries of the Greeks. So you notice here the cultural thing that in the Latin mind and the Roman mind, the Latin mind had become very organized and systematic. Right? And the Greek world remained, from the if you want to look at it from each point of view, from the Greek world, from the Latin point of view, this is the point of view. The Greeks, their language is obscure, and the obscure discoveries and all this. So it was very difficult for me to put into the Latin. I'm sorry, it's the other way around. I'm well aware it's not easy to elucidate in Latin verse the obscure discoveries of the Greeks. So the Latins, of course, thought that the Latin language, like today English is the language of business and of the world generally. Latin was never didn't become that for some time, but it changed into the kind of form it did because Greek language was less open to being sort of codified and systematized in the same way the Latin did. So Lucretius, appreciating the Greek, looks at the Latin language and sees its poverty in terms of philosophy, in terms of culture, in terms of things other than just a law and spreading an empire system across the world. The poverty of our language, the Latin language, and the novelty of the theme, that is the nature of things, that's the title of the book, the nature of things, compel me often to coin new words for purpose. Now, she's given us these words here that are all very important words. If your teachers ever want to get into them, I don't have time for them in the terminology here. We used to do much more of the Greek. We used to do pre-Socratics and all of this. So now what you want to get for Epicureanism and for Stoicism, as much as you get of that in Aeneid and your teachers, let's skip to what she says here about Epicurus. So let me come back to the slide that was on when you first came in, for those who were here. This will take you right, a text that will take you right into the heart of what he's doing. I had this on the thing for a good number of, about 10 minutes or 5 minutes in the beginning. When human life lay on the ground obscenely in full view, prostrate, crushed beneath the weight of superstition, the first among them who dared raise his human eyes to her was Greek. The first man to withstand her, he was the first man who desired to break the close-barred gates of nature down. The vital force of his intelligence prevailed, and he advanced his course, for past the blazing bulwarks of the world, far past the blazing bulwarks of the world, and roamed the whole immeasurable cosmos in his mind and in his soul. In triumph, he returns to us and brings us back this prize, to know what things can come about and what cannot arise, and what law limits the power of each with deep-set boundary stone. Therefore, it is the turn of superstition to lie prone, trod underfoot, while by his victory we reached the heavens. Now, Epicurus, of course, sometime before our friend, this was around 300 years before Lucretius, he was doing the same sort of thing that Socrates, all the philosophers were trying to do. So that what Socrates was trying to do to the Greek view of the cosmos, all right, that full of these gods. And so the religion that they were practicing was full of what is called superstition, all right? The fear of evil beings or evil gods or gods who do things that harm you, that make you kill your father and marry your mother, if you remember Ammo Oedipus, all right? So he wanted to, like Socrates tried to get this out of their minds by, in fact, helping those who are thinking that, well, what are these things? They are what he then calls forms. They are rational realities. Zeus, justice, Athene representing wisdom, Aphrodite representing beauty, so this is what they were all this philosophers have been trying. It's not the first one now that you're looking at. This is 300. Not, and Lucretius is not the first one, but even Epicurus, 300 years before the Common Era, philosophers had already been spending around 500 years with the pre-Socratics, and then Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, trying to rationalize the religion of the day, because the religion of the day, from their point of view, and as you can see here very clearly, was full of superstition. So what he's saying here now, this is the liberator of the human mind. Right? Greeks were all interested in reason and the development of reason. So he gives him that status, that Epicurus' philosophy is really truth. And so he, like a prophet, he's coming back and giving you things that you can really take seriously because it's coming from the divine. All right? Here he's telling you the prophet, as far as we are concerned, is Epicurus, who took the journey, the rational journey, and came back with his conclusions, which help us to actually understand what is this cosmos, and what can we know and what can we not know, and how can we know it. And so these are all the groundings of science, of course, because philosophers were also scientists at the same time. So Lucretius is looked at very much by everybody to see how the basic things that pushed just the scientific effort forward were already present there in what he was doing. The argument with Epicurus, of course, is the argument amongst ideologies, amongst philosophies, and all this. But one of the great contributions of Lucretius's work, and has continued to always attract the scientific world, is that he did many things that later on were developed into kind of scientific progress. So what did he do? First of all, therefore, in a cultural course like this, he was telling you in the Roman Empire, stop believing in all this superstitious stuff. There's no Prometheus with an eagle or a vulture pecking away at his liver eternally. And there's no Sisyphus who's rolling up that stone, and then it keeps coming back, and the next day he has to roll it back up forever, eternally. There are all these things about, the hell, in other words, and all this stuff about hell that seem to predominate the understanding, the fear of the gods. What new curse have you brought? Remember the Oedipus story. We worship you, Zeus, in dread. That whole element. He wanted to the philosophers were trying to, in one way or another, get rid of all of that. All right? So Socrates and Plato, of course, did it, and Aristotle, by not stopping to believe in a divinity, in a divine world, in a spiritual world, but they said, excuse us, but we know that one of the reasons they killed Socrates, one of the charges was he was an atheist. He was an atheist not because he didn't believe in the divine, but because he didn't believe in all these superstitious and the way they were understanding the gods. So now Lucretius in the Roman Empire is coming and saying, and giving you an impression that, Epicurus is the only one who did this sort of thing. So that would be unfair to all those other philosophers in one way or another. One of them early on said if the Ethiopians drew an image of God, it would be black, and trying to get people away from the sort of the superficial and superstitious aspects of any religion. So what can we say about the main items of you have lots of information on these things, and I'm certainly not going to pretend I can cover everything on them. In the past, this came after people had taken pre-Socratics, Socrates' apology. I'm sorry. It took me an hour and a half to get here because they were closing roads all over the place, and they don't tell you what to do, where to go next. And so I was roaming around Ras Beirut till I finally got here, and I got here at exactly 12:28. And it took me a half hour to get from Ain al-Mraisi to here, more than a half hour, but it should have just taken me 10 minutes. So I'm sorry, if I'm wobbly, it's not just because I'm aged and a dinosaur, it's also that I'm getting over the pain of getting here on time in Ras Beirut when they closed roads, because there were so many important people in Ras Beirut. You've got to be careful. Okay. So, the aim and purpose of Epicureanism is for the individual. a mind at ease, the blessing of quiet peace, that pain may be removed from our body, and that our mind, free from gnawing fears and cares, may know some pleasure. And for the people of Rome, untroubled peace in this evil hour of my country's history. So remember the existential situation again. It's no longer even the polis with the Peloponnesian War and the killing of Socrates, the context for what Plato was doing. Now you have the empire. And in the empire, you don't just have that kind of corruption happening or things that upset a thinker and a philosopher wants to try to get, what should we do to get out of it? Now, in the whole Roman Empire for him seems to be in a very bad situation. The method to achieve the aim is to make love, not war. Have you heard that? Have you ever heard that cliche? Make love, not war. Okay, well, this is where it, one of the places certainly that it comes from. So he follows Venus, and so Venus becomes a symbol. Remember, all these gods and goddesses, Venus is Athene now, right? Have become. No, Athene is Minerva. What am I talking about? Venus is Aphrodite. I'm so sorry. Ishtar, Aphrodite. So Venus, therefore, represents Ishtar and the same things that Ishtar and Aphrodite had. But now it's purely a philosophical symbol. All right? Well, of course, even Plato and Aristotle had done that. But both Plato and Aristotle, interestingly enough, still, like Aristotle, built a statue to Zeus, statues to Zeus and Athene in Athens. So there was still this thing there. With Lucretius, he wants to just tear you away from anything other than a philosophical symbolism of all of the gods, and we'll see what all the gods represent for him when we get down to that point. But he follows then what Venus represents for him. And what he wants to get away from is this terror, this darkness of the soul, this anxiety that the Roman Empire is causing us all. This darkness of the soul must be dispelled, neither by the rays of the sun, nor by the bright weapons of the day, but by an understanding of the outer form and the inner law of nature. The more you understand the cosmos, and this was, of course, that's what they were all trying to do. Even Sophocles was saying, we try to understand the cosmos, and we can't. It's too, it's too opaque. But we want to try to understand it. Yeah. And the problem with Oedipus is nobody can understand the cosmos. That's why it's tragic. But here now he's saying, no, we can. And just as Socrates and Plato had started the search, had started the search more seriously than the 400 years before of pre-Socratics, to penetrate the cosmos with philosophical items, with logos, with rational symbols and rational understanding. Well, he's now telling you this is the epitome of all of it. Don't look to Socrates and Plato and Aristotle as such. Look to Epicurus in the past, and who followed Democritus. These are the two great pre-Socratics that he would want you to think about. An understanding of the outer form and the inner law of nature. The more you understand of nature, the more you understand of the cosmos, the more you understand its, the forces within it that are working, the more you will come to enlightenment, an enlightenment that will free you from pain and will free you from anxiety, and your mind, your reason will of course tell you, use your reason, not just to understand that, but to understand also how to avoid pain, because remember, don't forget the pain aspect of Epicureanism. Atomism, materialism, in reality they're only atoms and the void from Democritus. Those atoms from which nature creates all things and increases and feeds them, into which, when they perish, nature again resolves them. Basically, the law of the conservation of energy, all right? Energy is neither created nor destroyed. Energy just shifts modes. And so that's what the universe is all about. Atoms falling freely in the void. He adds to Democritus's philosophy of materialism. This is Lucretius's addition now. The swerve. And we'll see in a minute why it's important. He has to add something. Just enough to call it a change of direction. If they, the atoms, did not swerve, then the void and no impact of atoms upon each other and nature never would have produced anything at all. So, in a sense, he is being critical of Epicurus, because Epicurus, following Democritus, was a strict deterministic materialism. And one of the things that our friend Lucretius has decided, that one of the things that causes a lot of anxiety is we think we're determined. Whereas the swerve for him, you see, leads him into the philosophical analogy of saying the swerve in nature is like the freedom of our will. We have a free will. And that should free you from any fears of something deterministic happening to you. You're not determined to kill your father and marry your mother. All right? There's no determination. Fate for him is simply what happens when these atoms hit each other, the way they hit each other, and the way we respond to them with our free will. And that's what fate is. It's nothing more than that. And, of course, he's going to also say, don't worry about death, because what is death, since we on the basis of this conservation of energy, if you want to use that, if you're familiar with that term, and basically if these atoms are, all they do is they come down, they swerve, and so they come together. When they come together, you form something forms, a cockroach, me, you, whatever is when we die, when everything dies, when it dies, what happens? It goes back, the atoms go back into the void, all right? And then they hit other atoms, and you get other things creating. So why fear death? You say the fear of death is the fear of hell, primarily, all right? And to put it into simple words, the fear of death, that you might, when you die, there might be something horrible happening to you. There's always the fear of death as the pain it causes and all of that, and that you have to solve with using your mind about it. But the main fear is the fear of hell. See, in religions, for him, and the religions of the day, the main cause of anxiety to humans is they tell you there's a hell, that not just are you going to suffer in this world, but there's the possibility that when you die, you're going to go to hell. Now, different understandings of hell surely have come up throughout the centuries. So hell does not necessarily mean, what this does there. Hell becomes to mean more and more in monotheistic theology and philosophy and all that. That basically the hell you're living in right now, if you took Dante and to the hell you're living right now, is going to continue. You are meant to be immortal, but what is your immortality? It's what's happening to you right now. You are shaping your immortality. It's not something that. So if you want, if you're trying to live the best kind of life, all right, then you should, as this is Socrates, by the way. Socrates has said that, why should I fear death? If death is, if there is, a quote-unquote heaven and hellishness in afterlife, well, I'm going to live the best kind of life I can live. If I'm trying, and I'm failing because I'm imperfect, but if I'm trying to live the best kind of life I live, then my reason should tell me that what I should expect is happiness after death. If I'm not doing that, why on earth, what logical, thing would lead me to say that suddenly at death I'm going to be, rewarded and happy and all of this? You're going to go on getting what you're doing. It's the basic Socratic view, and that's the basic view that theology and philosophy has taken in serious monotheistic thought all through the centuries. So he's now dealing, therefore, with any culture, any tradition, any religion that's based basically on the fear of death. And because of the fear of death I could very well go to hell and I can never be sure, And, in the tragic world, you're all going to a hellish kind of a situation. In the rationalist world, they started to talk more about the possibility of something. Hades was for everybody. Everybody goes to Hades. You remember in Gilgamesh, everybody goes to where the dream of Enkidu goes to. So if you want to apply it to today and to whatever is your religious beliefs or non-beliefs or whatever, anyone that comes and tells you that you might go to hell because of what you're doing, at least refer back to Socrates, if not to the depth of your particular religions, who might give you the answer right there. But Socrates tells you, live the best kind of life you can live. Follow Apollo's 2 commands. Seek truth always. Don't just seek power. And whatever truth you get, try to do the best for the polis. This is the cave story. All right? As soon as he gets knowledge, the philosopher would want to stay outside. But no, he's got to come back down and do what he now knows, he has to give it to the thing. This is one way of understanding those two Apollonian things. So Socrates was saying, live according to those, and your mind will give you rest about what's going to happen after death. If you're not living like that, then your mind should warn you, even just for the life here, of, stop living like that. Apart from whether it's going to cause you to hell, you're causing hell right now. Anyway, this is the main focus here. Nature, not the gods. Nature is the divine. What is divine? Not the gods, not God of monotheism, not the force within nature that you reach in mysticism, that you unite with in mysticism. The divine, for him, is simply there are gods, but they are part of nature, part of the cosmos, which always was there. But now we're going to see how he transforms them, how he transforms their meanings, so they will not be a source of worry for you. So nature is free and uncontrolled by proud masters, and runs the universe by herself without the aid of gods. Right? Gods enjoy immortal existence in utter tranquility, aloof and detached from our affairs. Hence, no divine planning, no divine intervention, no teleology, no providence, nothing that objectively with your reason, if you follow him, if you accept what he's saying, then this should lead you to rationally say, there is no rational reason for me to worry about any kind of fate or something like that, like happened to Oedipus. Now, to religion specifically, religion is superstition and true piety. What is religion? What is superstition? What is true piety? What is true religious spirit, if you like? Human life crushed to the earth under the dead weight of religion. Okay, so that's this is the thing. But remember, he's talking about the religion that he knows. He's not talking about any other religion other than the religion of the Greeks and the Romans. It may apply to the others. That's up to you to then see, but you can't just automatically project it onto that. That's not good reading of texts. Fables of the gods, all these myths and fables about the gods, how they marry one another, or how they fight one another, or how they fight on different sides in wars, or how they, all the sort of fables that have come up in Greek mythology and part of the religion. Poor humanity, to saddle the gods with such responsibility, and to throw in a vindictive temper. Yani haram, these gods that you have created in your own image, is what he's telling them. As if he's personifying them. Don't make the gods look like that. You see, there are gods, but the gods are not like that. And then don't add insult to injury to saying they're not only like that, they're then sort of, they're sadists, and they want to make you suffer, in hell. If you're searching for what is a true view of the divine, a true view of God, etc., these are very good things to keep in mind for about the God you happen to particularly believe in or not believe in. So this is not piety. So piety, pietas. Pietas has much more meaning. Piety, unfortunately, in the Victorian age in England, started to mean, be puritanical and do all the things you're supposed to do, And the stress on that was so far up that one of the periods of history where hypocrisy just was loving itself all over the place was in this Victorian Christian society that a lot of the stuff comes up in the way you think of, or the 20th century and 21st century think about religion. This piety, pietas, and next week Professor Nassar will speak about that more because it's one of the basic virtues in the Roman world and in the Stoic world at the same time. That basically pietas meant to have a proper, responsible, rational respect for those things you should rationally have a proper respect. That's the meaning of piety. You can give definitions to words as far as any way you like, but the way the Stoic was using it, when you see that, and the way he's actually using it here as well, is this is true piety. What if he doesn't like the other kinds of piety? What is true piety? What he's talking about? This is not piety, the oft-repeated show of bowing a veiled head before a graven image, this bustling to every altar, this kowtowing and prostration on the ground with palms outspread before the shrines of gods. True piety lies rather in the power to contemplate the universe with a quiet mind. You see, this is the philosophical religion, right? The pure philosophy. Aristotle, what's the height of the, what's the heaven for the philosophers? Pure theoria, pure contemplation, pure, in a sense, union with. It's a kind of a mystical element, even in Plato, in Aristotle. But it's only for the philosopher, and it's only through this rational mode of philosophizing that you can ever reach it. And so he's taking that from Aristotle, contemplating the universe with a quiet mind. But he's leaving a lot of Aristotle out of his particular view. True piety lies rather in this view. So now to the human being, all right? Sensation is more important than reason. All right? Now you see, you're using reason, but you're using reason to discover. So don't ever think somebody is irrational or is not a rationalist because he concludes different things. All right? Sophocles was extremely rational. Homer was extremely rational. But they used their rationality to produce a conclusion, a view, a vision of the universe that was not a rationalistic one. Socrates and Plato come and using their minds in that same way. They claim that that was poor use of reason, that the proper use of reason will lead you to a rationalistic view of life. All right? And now, this is another rationalistic view of life, but it's different from that of Plato or of Aristotle. It's a rationalistic view, which tells you if you use reason properly on the cosmos, you will recognize that there's something more important than reason, sensation, you see? So it's still, the way you reach the thing is whether it's rationalistic. So rational is you're using rationality. Rationalistic is if you use it in a way to glorify reason. That reason is the most important thing. All right? Well, now he's in a rationalistic context of trying to do away from the tragedians who are the source of all the superstition. In fact, he would tell you that I'm another form of rationalism, in fact, because people often miss that. That I'm telling you the most important thing you're doing is using reason, but the use of reason, so you're not going to discover truth in any other way. The use of reason makes you, giving it the highest point. You're not going to learn it through religion. You're not going to learn it through experience. You're not going to learn it through tradition. You're going to get it. The source of it is reason. So that's one meaning of rationalism, or being rationalistic. But the conclusion is going to be different. Just like the conclusion of Plato is different from the conclusion of Aristotle, it might be different from conclusions of Ibn Rushd and Ibn Sina and Augustine and Aquinas later on. All right, they are still, like the monotheists, are still called the monotheistic rationalists. But they believed that there was more than just reason as that, but they were using reason, and the world is rationalistic, at least. The faith thing tells you life is more than rationalistic. Rationalistic, you must be that way if you're to understand anything. But the true rationalistic perspective will take you to accept the greatness of faith that you could never reach just by doing reason. That's the 202 story, if you take anything there. So here, this is your sensation. Can reason, if derived from false sensation, your rationalistic approach, you see, has led you to see that reason itself is derived from false sensation. Can it be invoked to contradict them when it is itself wholly derived from the senses? Whatever the senses may perceive at any time is all true. Okay, this is one form of one aspect of empiricism later on in the modern period. That the thing you can be sure of is what you're sensing right now, what you're seeing, that experience you can be absolutely sure of. So this is, again, you see precursors of what later on get developed into full-fledged philosophies. Whatever the senses may perceive at any time is all true. Reason cannot work is always working on sensation, and so it's. So anyway, this is, if your philosophers want to go into it more, I'd have to spend much more time. I don't want to. Voluptas, pleasure, delight, the guide of life through the ways of Venus. Free will, as a result of the swerve. Remember I told you, why is the swerve important? Why does he just follow, strictly speaking, Epicurus? he doesn't follow Epicurus because Epicurus is following Democritus, and there's no free will. So he has now come to believe, by the time of the Roman Empire, that free will actually is a positive thing, and that it frees you from any feeling that you're under some sort of curse, some sort of cosmic curse, or that you're under sort of determinism, and that it's not you who's really determining in any way your own fate. If the atoms would not swerve and originate new motions that will break the chains of fate and the eternal infinite sequence of cause and effect, whence comes the free will that all living creatures possess? So you see, this is another one of his axioms. You can say, well, I don't believe in free will. But he's saying, no, where does it come from? So he's assuming, in other words, all of his audience must agree there is free will. Well, where does free will come from? Okay, so that's a point of that somebody can debate with him even just at that level. But the point is to understand, what is he trying to say? He's trying to say that free will free you from the curse of determinism. Will let you see that you're not under any sort of a curse, that the gods don't control you, that the gods are not interested in anything. And I want to go back a little bit just to the gods there, because I didn't say enough about his view of the gods. The gods for him are simply fine atoms, fine bodies, that have very, very refined atoms that we can't see with our normal sight. All right, they are beings made out of that kind of material, and so, but they are perfect Epicureans. They're models. So he takes all of the gods and makes into them, or draws out of them, a model for the best way to live an Epicurean life. They live aloof. They live detached. They don't concern themselves with anything that's going to give them bother and anxiety and pain. And humans, and worrying about responsibility for them and sending them to a hell or a heaven or whatever, the gods are perfectly aloof and detached. They don't care about you. See? So don't worry about them. Don't worry. They exist. And he says sometimes they appear in visions and stuff like that, he says. So, but they don't care about you. So why should they be a source of concern for you, since you're not a concern for them? They're neither trying to help you nor are they trying to harm you. All right? They're just there, being good Epicureans. For you to be a good human, therefore, you should be in the image of these gods, or you should be reflecting these gods. To be God-like would be to, and so what he says, basically, politics, society, first, mortality of the soul. We have nothing to fear in death. Some men, with no understanding of how our nature dissolves at death, but keenly aware of the ills of this life, afflict life still more with anxieties and fears by making up false tales about the time that comes after the end. And mishkefi, what we suffer here. Come on, we're going to get this horrible stuff out there, because I assure you that's not the meaning of all religions. So don't sort of generalize, which is always, we put everything into one soup so we don't have to study them. It's easy to take one we like and then pour all the rest of them into it by selectively looking at them. That's not the view of what hell means in any decent theological understanding of hell in the monotheistic religion, certainly. So in politics, society, we must release ourselves from the prison of affairs and politics. So you think of the gods, they don't care about us, because if they did that, it would cause them anxiety. So you don't care about the polis, don't care about politics, all right? Care about number one, care about you, all right? That's the only one that's important is yourself and your own mind, giving you the maximum of pleasure and the minimum of pain. The utilitarians later on add, to really be rational, you can't have pleasure if the majority of people are not happy. Therefore, the true rational view is, pain and pleasure are your masters, Epicureanism tells you, but the pleasure that you get is the pleasure that will be shared with the majority of the people in a democracy, all right? Because if they're not happy, you can't be happy. So your own happiness depends on that. So utilitarianism doesn't suddenly switch gears and become, socially conscious or anything like that. It just says, just using reason on the cosmos and what happens, you can see that if you just seek to satisfy yourself and you're living in a community, it's not going to work. So work democratically, do all of this in a democratic context, seek to maximize the pleasure of the maximum number of people, right? And then you're more likely to be free of anxiety. But Epicurus, no, just don't stay away from politics, the prison of affairs and politics. This is Epicurus, and of course. Here on all of these things, other than the swerve, Lucretius is simply giving you Epicurus' philosophy in a beautiful poem. One of the greatest poems in Latin is the poem that you're reading. Justice never is anything in itself. You know, all this stuff about justice and that Plato and Aristotle were all concerned about. And justice is not something in itself, but in the dealings of men with one another. When people deal with one another, then what we call justice emerges as something that we want to think about. But it has no existence, no form, or no anything like that. It's a practical, material thing that comes up when we're dealing with each other, and we have to make sure we get, of the pleasure-pain thing in that compact. So it's a kind of compact not to harm or be harmed. All right? That's all that justice is. It doesn't bring any values or any hierarchy of values or any sort of things that are more important than anything else. It's just harm. Pleasure, pain are your masters. Later on it will be said even more very clearly by utilitarianism. Friendship. Of all the things which wisdom acquires to produce the blessedness of the complete life, far the greatest is the possession of friends. Remember Amu Gilgamesh. He doesn't become human until he starts to have a friend. And I won't mention anybody else. Okay. It is not so much our friends' help that helps us as the confidence of their help. But he also advises you not to have too many friends, because then you get into the problem of having friends who disagree with you. So seek a group of friends and keep a group of friends that agree with you, so that you have the minimum possible conflict even there, and so you could have the maximum number of pleasure. So there's no such thing, and friendship itself will make you human, because one can read that into the Gilgamesh thing, and that friendship itself is worth pursuing, whether whether it has a consequence or not. It's not. So in conclusion, the Epicurean sage, the wise man, is pleasure. That's happiness. Follow your nature, and your nature is to seek pleasure and avoid pain. Pick the day. Live use each day to its most. Don't think about tomorrow or yesterday. You have one day to live, focus on it. Pick the day. Don't worry about history, don't worry about the past, don't worry about anything. Whatever you have, use that day, use it in the best intelligent way to get the maximum of pleasure and the minimum of pain. Live hidden. Well lived who lives hidden away. Stay away from things. So it's an aloof and detachment kind of philosophy, and it promises you, if you believe all this and if you follow it and you live it, you will have peace of mind and can live in the global world of Trump and others today. Thank you very much.